Hello everyone, this is Janelle, also known as My Happy Day. Today we are going to sample some more fine cooking on another episode of Mokja. Now this is a recipe that caught my eye not too long ago when I was watching the Food Network. It was on an episode of Beat Bobbly Flay where Bobby decided to bring together meatloaf and kimchi. Oh yes. This is something I've been wanting to try ever since I saw the episode, and now that I finally have the ingredients and time, let's try and make kimchi meatloaf. Alright, first things first, I'm going to make the glaze for the meatloaf. It calls for gochujang, soy sauce, and clover honey. I could not find clover honey, so I got regular honey. And Bobby's recipe does not call for ketchup. However, I believe it will help cut the spiciness of the gochujang. Alright, next up, I'm going to chop up that garlic there, toss it in that pan there with some canola oil, along with a bit of the red pepper flakes over there. Another reason you should check the recipe, if I had just thrown that garlic in there, it would have burned because I did not prep the kimchi. You should drain and chop 1 cup of kimchi, and that will go in after the garlic and the pepper flakes have cooked for 30 seconds. Alright, as you see, I've added the kimchi. I'm going to thoroughly combine it and then remove it to a plate so that it can cool for 10 minutes. If your kitchen gets hot easily when the oven is on, I'd say now is a good time to preheat rather than when you start prepping. Alright, next up we're going to add 2 tablespoons of fish sauce, 2 tablespoons of soy, 2 teaspoons of sesame oil, and 2 eggs. And whisk to combine. Alright, I'm going to take my sauce mixture and my kimchi and I'm going to throw it into this big bowl right here. Alright, and now we have the meat. I have some ground chuck and some ground pork. You only need 12 ounces, which calls for 3/4 of a pound. I've got 1 pound of each, but that'll be just fine. And those are going to go right into that bowl there. Now when my mom makes meatloaf, she makes it in a pan. I've never made meatloaf before, and a lot of people seem to think online that the best way to do it is on a baking sheet, and that is also what Bobby's recipe calls for, so I'm gonna give it a try. Alright, this is not gonna look appetizing, especially if you're not into meat. We're just gonna dump it onto this pan, which I have lined with foil. I did not have parchment paper, so I figured that foil would work just fine. And supposedly people like the baking sheet method because it allows the fat to drain off. So we'll see what happens there. Gonna get my hands dirty. Alright. I don't have gloves because I don't really keep like cooking gloves in the kitchen. So this is really messy. And my hands are gonna smell like kimchi for a while. This is going to be the ugliest meatloaf that you have ever seen. It's supposed to be about a foot, which is like from here to here if you use the metric system, so between your elbow and your wrist. I feel like meatloafs should be, you know, I feel like meatloaf should look like a loaf of bread, and mine's kind of looking, it's not looking appetizing, folks, but I mean, we'll see what happens. Alright. Okay, this seems to be about a foot long, and then half as wide. It probably shouldn't be so thick, but I also did have extra meat, so I'll probably just have to let it cook a little longer. And now we're going to add the glaze. As you see, I've got it right here. I added a little more honey and soy sauce and ketchup because it was just way too spicy, and I seem to have too much of it, so I would say cut back the amount of gochujang you use. Alright, so we're just going to brush it on top. You don't want to make it too thick, because I think otherwise it'll burn too much. You just want to have a bit of flavor on top. This is already going to be pretty strong anyway, because of the gochujang. So, just do enough to cover the top. If you want to go all around the sides, you could, but I think that most people who make meatloaf just put their glaze over the top. Alright, my meatloaf is ready. My oven is preheated, so we're going to stick it in here, and it's going to bake for 1 hour. Ooh, look at that, guys. Looks very nice. It obviously lost its form, and you can see the fat has been draining out, which is good. Okay, so now we're going to see what the internal temperature is. Alright, looks like it was holding steady at 150, and it should be 155. So I'm just going to leave it in for a couple more minutes, and then I'll take it out, and then we'll see how it tastes. So as you can see, it's kind of a big globby mess because it lost its form and all that fat drained out, which is probably good in the end. So I am going to let it sit for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to slice it up. This looks much better now that I've gotten rid of all the drippings and fat. So now all we have to do is slice it up and give it a taste. So as you see, I've got my meatloaf, some baby carrots, and some mashed sweet potatoes. Alright, let's give it a taste. I'm going to cut up a bit here. I want to get a bit of the glaze on there too. Not too bad. Ooh, I just dropped some. That's okay. A little bit of a kimchi smell, but not too strong. Nice. So you do get a bit of the kimchi, but it's not a strong flavor, so it's not something that overpowers everything else. And the glaze on top turned out sweet. I think if I hadn't added the extra honey and soy sauce, it would have been much spicier, but this turned out really good. So that's it. That's the kimchi meatloaf. It was actually a lot easier than I anticipated. It's just that everything takes a very long time because the prep takes roughly an hour and then cooking it takes an hour. So you need a lot of time on your hands if you're going to make this recipe. Are there any Korean fusion foods that you like to cook? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.